It's the Franklin Show, live from Franklin, Michigan, with America's favorite adopted pup, Franklin Delano Roosevelt Lloyd Wright Sinatra Seltzer, and his friend and favorite Franklin dog adopter, Michael Seltzer, and Ted Ferguson, star of stage, screen, television, and movies. And here he is now, Michael Seltzer!
Well, hey, everybody. Thanks to my great band and my announcer, China Jones, Ted Ferguson, who will be a guest on the show. What a great show we have for you, all about entertainment. We've got a couple of superstars coming up, and I can't wait to share them and their stories with everyone on this edition of The Franklin Show. Stand by. We'll be right back. Thanks, everybody.
For decades, I've taught you everything I know. But only you can prevent wildfires.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Franklin Show. And I am so excited and honored to have a major Hollywood icon on the show today. This man you will recognize. I mean, he has had so many incredible roles on television, in the movies, on stage, on the radio. And I mean, you probably remember him when he portrayed Ted Baxter, the lovable newsman on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And then you probably also recognize him when he was on Cheers, you know, the bartender, Ted Danson. But anyway, let me introduce you folks to this gentleman and a scholar, Mr. Ted Ferguson. Welcome to the Franklin Show.
Well, I bet you that wonderful pet you got there put you up to doing that.
Well, he's a big fan of yours, and he's got an incredible memory. You know, I mean, just Franklin is the star of the show. I'm just the vessel. But seriously, Ted Ferguson, God bless you for being here today. Now you're in, I think, Shreveport, Louisiana.
I am in Shreveport. Yeah, that's my home. That's where I live. You know, I've thought so many times about moving to California, which I really loved living in Burbank. And I've thought several times about moving to Marietta, Georgia, which is Atlanta. Yeah, I did have a condominium in New Orleans, and it was actually across the lake, Lake Pontchartrain. And I had that for about 3 years. And then all of a sudden, my wonderful governor at the time in the state of Louisiana took the incentives away. And they went away. Therefore, the movie industry was like quail. It was like gone. Right. And there was no reason for me to have a condominium in New Orleans because it was just another money. And the reason I live in Louisiana is because I have a house. It's been paid for. I bought this house in 1973 when we paid $35,000 cash for a house.
Wow.
Today, the same house would be probably $250,000. So, you know, that's the deal. Louisiana is still, you know, it's not like California. It's not even like Michigan. You know, you can still get an okay place for a reasonable amount of money, but just the same, you know, prices are what they are.
I understand why you would not necessarily want to be in Hollywood, because that's crazy.
I love it. And I love Burbank. I love living in Burbank. I like the mentality there. Yeah. Hollywood, living in Hollywood, across the over there. Yeah. No, you might wake up and have several guests in your house that you don't want. So I mean,
don't I know
you would have people that look like people that I have played many times, and I've probably played, I guess, 7 or 8 homeless guys, which I make a great homeless guy.
And I can sympathize with what you're saying, because I have kids who live in Hollywood, Los Angeles, and
you live in Hollywood.
Well, they don't live in Hollywood. They live in Encino, but every now and again they wake up and I'm in their house. So that's that's like waking up to a homeless man.
Well, that's okay.
So
that's all right. I know people. I know people that are from Michigan. I have a very, very close friend who lives in San Diego. She's an actress, but she is from Bloomfield Hills. She went to Groves.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, I remember all the high schools. I remember most of the inner city high schools, their colors and their mascots, you know, from being China Jones at WDRQ. And
well, that's where I wanted to start, because you're wearing that illustrious T-shirt. So we harken back now to 50 years ago when you were China Jones on WDRQ Detroit Radio. Yeah. And that was the beginning of your broadcast career? Yeah.
No. I started in Mobile as an overnight guy, doing midnight to 6. Scott Shannon, who is a notorious jock from around the world. He's in New York City, been there for a long time. She was Super Shan on WDRQ. I worked 6 days a week, $75 a week. Then I moved to Baton Rouge and I did afternoon drive on WLCS. Then I moved to WKGN in Knoxville. Then I went to WMMS in Cleveland, and I was on the very first staff of that radio station, which is actually a legendary radio station, the Buzzard in Cleveland, WMMS. Then went to WDVE in Pittsburgh, which is still the #1 radio station in Pittsburgh. And it was at the time ABC O&O. ABC owned and operated. And from there, where did I go? I went back to Cleveland, WGC. Anyway,
but China, you missed one. You were at ABX too.
Well, that came after WDRQ. That was like 1970, probably 77.
Right.
I went to WDRQ from Norfolk, Virginia. I was at WQRK in Norfolk.
Yeah.
And Bill Bailey called me and said, send a tape. And I sent the tape, and I said, okay. And he said, Ted Ferguson, oh, by the way, we're going to change your name.
I was going to ask about
that. And I said, oh, really? And he said, yeah. He said, well, what do you think about China Jones? And I wanted to get out of Norfolk so bad, they could have called me Blind Melon Chitlins, and I would have been right on out of there. So anyway, I went to WDRQ. Yeah. And after that, when I got fired at DRQ, which I got fired, Tom Mosher, they had to let me go. It was a big row over basically nothing. I went to WCHB, which is in Inkster.
Yeah, sure.
And did afternoon drive with Butterball Jr.
Yeah.
And then I got a call from Bob Birch, who was the national program director for Century Broadcasting. And that's WABX. And he said, hey, listen. He said, we're number 23 in Detroit.
Yeah.
He said, come and talk to us. Do you have any answers? And I said, well, you're going to have to ask me the question. And I said, do I have any answers? Of course I have answers. Are you kidding? We were the first radio station to actually take CKLW one-on-one. And we took them on and did the job.
Right.
And I said, broadcasting is simple. Making a successful radio station is a very, very, very easy proposition. You ask the audience through a research package what the heck they want.
Yeah.
And then you have the gall to give it to them. For crying out loud. Give them the music they want. The biggest problem with radio is that you've got egotistical juice jockeys and you've got egotistical program directors who say, I know what they want. And they wind up playing their own favorite music. So we went in there, and in about a year at WABX, we went from that to number 3 in Detroit and beat WRIF. Al Wilson came into my office and actually kissed me.
I'm going to see Al next week for lunch, and I'll ask him about that.
No, Al was absolutely over the moon when we beat WRIF. And it was like dying and going to heaven. And I was a disciplinarian.
Yeah.
I was always a disciplinarian. I'm a disciplinarian to this day. It's going to be this way, guys.
Yeah.
You're not going to be, I'm going to bust you if you play Sticks every day and it's your favorite. And we're not playing Captain Beefheart because that's garbage. You know, I mean, I'm sorry.
You had an illustrious radio career, but you've gone on to such great fame, and people are going to see videos that they will. I mean, so in 2005, my staff tells me you had a principal role in Blonde Ambition with Jessica Simpson, Luke Wilson, and Willie Nelson.
Uh-huh.
And was that the start of your Hollywood?
Yeah, pretty much. I was in Shreveport, and whatever. So there was an agent in Shreveport, a guy by the name of Jeffrey Nightbird.
Yeah,
he was an agent. He was a legitimate agent. So anyway,
aren't they all?
Yeah, no. No. Agents are interesting. I've got 5 great agents.
Yeah,
I've got 5 great agents. But anyway, the story is this. They had a scene where they had Norwegian priests. Mm-hmm. And the Norwegian priests were there, and they came in and they had some kind of a situation with Jessica Simpson. They had 4 roles. They had 2 extra roles and 2 speaking roles. Now, they flew one of the priests in from Los Angeles because he had to do a mime of that song, Big Butts. I like big butts. He had to not mime it. He had to actually play the music track and do the rap part of it, which he could do. And he's a good actor. He's interesting. Anyway, I called the embassy in New York City for Sweden, because Sweden and Norwegian are basically the same language. And I got them to translate that scene into Norwegian. So when I showed up that morning on set, I went to the casting person and I said, I can do this scene in the language. And she said, no. And I said, yeah. So they put me in front of the director, who was, I can't remember their name right now.
Marshall.
Yes, right. That's right. Penny Marshall's nephew.
Mm.
And he said, do it. So I did it, and I had already worked in Sweden. I had worked in Sweden as a consultant, because I was working for a big company in Europe for a long, long time as a consultant going into Eastern Germany and all that. So anyway, boom, I got the extra role, and it was now a speaking role. And I was basically the lead in the scene with Jessica Simpson and Luke Wilson. It was great. It was great.
And so that was the start. And since then, how many movies? How many? I mean, your list of performances is too vast. I could probably do a rolling thing here on the show.
Yeah,
maybe we will do that.
To be honest, I've done 141. Wow. Now, I would say probably about 10 or 15 of those are extra roles, non-credited extra roles.
Yeah.
Because you start out and you do extra roles, and what you wind up doing is you wind up figuring out the eye line of the camera behind the guy that's being shot, so you can actually get seen. So you do that, and you jockey for position and do. I got kicked off the set at True Grit because I kept inching as they were moving the cameras in the scene. I would inch into where I would be into it, and they caught me and they busted me and they fired me. But who cares? After that, I started getting okay roles, pretty good roles in various types of things. Yeah. And it would grow and grow and grow and grow and grow, and then I started getting network shows. And I would say for the last 12 years, I've been doing pretty much network TV. I don't have to worry about it, because I've got an LA agent that's real experienced. I've got a Dallas agent that's been in the business 35 years. I've got a good New Orleans agent. My agent on the East Coast is 35-year experience, probably the biggest, at least top 5 on the East Coast. That would be the People Store, which has now been changed to Formation.
I'm going to need to have a sidebar with you, because Franklin and I have a contract negotiation coming up on our show, and I've had Swifty Lazar, and he's just not cutting it for me. So we're going to have to talk about your New York agent.
Well, My New York agent is Linda McAllister. But, I'll tell you the truth.
Reach out, Linda.
The key, the key to your agent situation is you've got to have somebody who's got the grease.
Sure.
They've got to have the grease with the casting people.
Yeah.
You can't please all of them. There's going to be some that you've never booked with, and I've got people in New Orleans that I've never booked with.
Yeah.
I've got people on the East Coast that I've sent 25 auditions to various ones and never booked with them once. And the auditions are good enough. I'm sorry, they're good enough. But, that's just how it rolls. But
I'm going to need one that has puppy treats too. So we'll talk about that after.
I can give you some guidance. You're
Okay.
wanting New York, or you're wanting LA, or you're wanting general?
I don't care where.
Whatever. We'll do sidebar.
We'll good representation, because we need to take our show into syndication. So that's another story. But anyway, so what's your favorite role? Now you've done a number of TV roles. You're on Jimmy Kimmel as an extra coming up on. We'll show that. But what is your favorite project or current love in the business that you're in now?
Well, the Kimmel roles were actually principal roles in which, they were major, because he would do a monologue bit, and then he would come back and we would do something silly, ridiculous about the monologue bit. One of which was I was a California nut grower. I made my living with my nuts.
I love that one.
And the other one was the old farmer. Now, the old farmer, let me think if I'm trying to remember. That was the first one. The way it works with Jimmy Kimmel, though, it's an interesting thing, because you're there and the band, you're in this big theater, but they shoot it. Now, John Kimmel is the basic director for all of those skits. That's John. And
no relation to Jimmy, I'm sure.
No. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, it's his brother. Yeah. You know how Jimmy is. Jimmy's like that. But Jimmy, it's okay. Who cares?
Yeah, right.
If the job gets done and it's done properly, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But anyway, the band is down below, but the band is rehearsing. So the way you do it is they go, okay, band, the band stops and they go, okay, here we go. And you do it. And that's how it works.
Yeah.
You do that. So that was those two. And they were really a lot of fun. My favorite role I've got two, was the NCIS New Orleans judge scene.
Yeah.
Man, those people were just absolutely the most wonderful people to work with. They were respectful.
Yeah.
They did a great job. The scene was pretty much all about me and the girl. And naturally, the stars of the show, Becula and them, were in the deal. They were congratulatory at the end. He came to me and he said, "You played that just absolutely perfectly for a judge." And judges are hard to play because most people overplay a judge. But, it's one of those things. I don't know what it is. But when I get on a scene like that, natural things happen that I didn't plan. And it works out that way. I was also the series regular and star of Tropical Cocktails on Adult Swim with the Cartoon Network.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that was 10 episodes. We shot 3 weeks in Atlanta on soundstage, which was the best sound stages you ever seen in your life. And I'm not kidding. And then we shot 3 weeks in the Dominican Republic. Now, people don't realize how hard that work is. But you know what? Thank your lucky stars and our Lord and Savior Jesus, because I'm a born-again Christian, for what you have and what happens for you. Because those are wonderful gifts that if you don't stop for 2 seconds and think about just how lucky you are to be there, then you're making a mistake. I was so young and inexperienced to an extent
Yeah.
I mean, I'd been in the business for 15 years when I was China Jones at WDRQ and all of that stuff. To stop for a second and smell the roses,
Yeah.
you know? And Mosher used to say, Tom Mosher, the general manager, used to say, stop and smell the coffee, you know, but none of us did. We were all just cruising through and, you know, this and that and China Jones and all of those things. And, you know, do you know where the name China Jones came from?
No, I thought you were going to tell us that. So go ahead.
China Jones was a Daffy Duck episode.
This is Hong Kong, the melting pot of the Orient, where every man and his brother is out for a quick buck. And sure, I'm not above making a fast buck myself, one way or another. They call me China Jones.
And it was Disney, and he was a private eye in Hong Kong, and he said, my name is China Jones. And that's where China.
That's what our audience has been waiting to hear.
That's where China Jones came from. Now, whether it was Bill Bailey or Jerry Clifton, who was the national program director, it was not Rochelle Staub, who was the second in command as far as programming was concerned. But it was either Bailey or it was Jerry Clifton. Now, poor Bill has passed away.
Right.
So I can't ask him, did you get that from that cartoon or did you dream that up? Of course, if we stop for a second and think about where it came from. You remember the goofy song, Basketball Jones?
Yeah.
I got a basketball. That's Cheech and Chong. Well, we all know what a Jones is.
Yeah, exactly.
We know what a Jones is.
Right.
And if you've got a Jones, it can be good or it can be bad.
Yeah.
And we also know what China is.
Yeah.
Now, put that together. Now, did they think of that when they named Daffy Duck China Jones? I would doubt very seriously. Yeah. At the time, over the years, there have been 3 Chinas on radio. There was a guy by the name of China Blue in New York City on WOR. Yeah. There was a guy named China Smith in Los Angeles on KLOS. And oddly enough, I went from WDRQ, from WABX to KWest, KWST in Los Angeles as program director. And China Smith, I hired him from KLOS, and China Smith worked for me and did 6 to 10 on KWest in LA. And China was a great
very confusing back then.
Yeah, nobody knew. LA didn't know about China Jones, and Detroit didn't know about China Smith, and New York didn't know about either one of us. But China was a wonderful guy. His name was Thomas Rohrbacher. He's from Grand Rapids.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
Yeah, and he was a great guy. And the other people on that staff at KWest were J.J. Jackson, who was the very first video jock on MTV.
Oh.
It was Rachel Donahue, who is well known all over. It was Dusty Street. I had a great staff, a wonderful staff on KWest. But you know, we had a great staff at WABX. Karen Savelli was really, really, really a good job.
Karen was on the show just a couple weeks ago. We did a tribute to Riff, and Karen was on, and we talked about you, man. And we've talked about you. Well, you know, because of my background in marketing and my love of broadcast, I'm the guy who created the Detroit radio reunions with Art Volo years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
1988, and have done them so many times. We get together every month when I'm in Michigan for lunch, and I'll be seeing a lot of these folks in a couple of weeks when I return. But the point is, I've done a number of these radio tribute shows. I did one about Keener. I did one about CKLW, and then we did one about ABX. Your name pops up, and I am so glad that when I reached out to you, Ted, that you were so gracious and so responsive and so available. I respect you. I admire you. You have a legion of fans out there in numbers of categories, both radio, television, movies, etc. And I'm just appreciative of you coming on the Franklin Show today to tell these great.
Let me invite you to check out a couple of movies.
Yes.
There's a movie called Carved, Carved, Carved on Hulu.
Yep.
It's a funny horror movie. It's about a pumpkin who becomes a monster and starts killing everybody, and he kills me. It's fun. It really is. I had a great monologue in the deal. I had about 12 minutes. There's another movie that's on Tubi. I've got probably 6 or 8 on Tubi, but the one on Tubi that you need to see is 5 Star Murder. Now, I'm one of the principal actors, and I'm through it all the way through, and I'm not going to tell you who the serial killer is, but you'll enjoy seeing a serial killer that you know.
I'm covering Franklin's ears because that's the scary stuff you're talking about.
Oh, I tell you what, every time I see a horror movie, my big movies, my favorite show right now is Mobland on Paramount Plus. Ooh.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet.
I get auditions all the time. Today, to be quite frank with you, it is very, very, very competitive.
Sure.
If you're going to get a role and you're watching somebody that's in a particular role, you're going to see the skill of the casting people, because the casting people are tremendously skilled. Let me invite you to check out my IMDb page and look on that and click a project, because it gives me something called the Star Meter, which gives me a little better rating and a little better number. So I'm giving myself a plug on that one. China Jones is Ted Ferguson, and China Jones, baby, WDRQ.
That brings back a lot of memories to a lot of people from 50 years ago. But for the youth of America, Mr. Ted Ferguson is quite the actor, quite renowned. And I am proud to call you a friend, and I thank you for coming on the show today, Ted.
Absolutely.
Thank you
it's
so much.
Absolute pleasure. God
we
bless
will
you.
check out your webpage. James will be putting that on the screen for my audience to enjoy. And we'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors. Thanks, everybody.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. What a great show. What a great time we're having here. And I mean, that's entertainment, folks. This is entertainment. Franklin and I are so delighted to introduce you to a very good friend of ours, Greg Russell. God bless you, man. We've known each other for decades. Welcome to the Franklin Show. Greg, so great to have you, man.
Mike, thank you so much. You and Franklin both, thank you for the invite. And like you said, you and I have known each other. Wow.
Yeah, I'm thinking back in the mid-'70s probably. And I have to start with, let's start at the beginning, because you've done everything. I mean, you're the current host of Live in the D on WDIV, and you do great entertainment reporting. You were at Channel 20. You've done, you've done so many things. So let's start. Where did you first get started in the business?
Actually, it started when I was in college. I went to the University of Detroit, as we were called then, now the University of Detroit Mercy. I started out doing voiceovers for people. Like a lot of the graduates who got jobs at these, smaller ad agencies were looking for a voiceover talent that they could just pay $25 and a 6-pack of beer. And so they'd give me a call. But then right before I graduated from U of D in 1978, there was a recent graduate, a guy named Gene Khrushchevsky, and he was working at WJR-FM. And at that time, Mike, they were basically a completely automated station. They played what was called beautiful music back in the day, AKA elevator music.
Right.
But they were about to flip over to having all live, personalities. So they called the University of Detroit saying, we don't care if it's somebody who's just getting out, because, it's a nice job and it's not a hard radio job. So they said, oh, we got this guy who's been doing this stuff, it seems like for the past 3 years. So I went over to WJR-FM, did an interview. And next thing you know, a week before I graduated, I got the job. Wow. So I was your evening music host. And it's really funny, Mike. Back then, we used to make the joke about our listening audience was age 60 and beyond. I know.
And now here we are, 60 and beyond.
We're the audience for WJR-FM.
Right. All right. So that was, and that was WJR, man. That was big time stuff.
Oh,
I mean, absolutely. That was the J.P. McCarthy era when JR had massive numbers, right? So
That's for sure. Because
that
I
was
used
quite
to
the
like
start.
when
All
I
right, so where did you go from there, Greg?
from there I went to WOMC.
Yeah.
Did evenings there. Trying to think who else was it? Well, Mark Avery was there doing mornings after he left WJR. Let's see. Good grief. I'm trying to think of who all else was there. But I think one of my nights at WJR that really sticks out to me, Mike, and I'll never forget it, is our studio. I did the evenings, I think 6 to midnight. And we would leave the door to the studio open because there was no one else there. And the newsroom was right across the hall. So in case anything happened, you remember the old days of the teletype machines where if something happened, you'd hear the ding, ding, dings.
Yeah.
So it was a Monday night. I'm sitting over there. And next thing you know, it's ding, 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 ding. And I was like, what the heck? Is the world blowing up? I go over to the teletype machine, pull off the first thing. Mind you, this is December the 8th, 1980. And the news came across that John Lennon had been shot in New York.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, then they just kept coming across and finally came across, saying that he had died. And it was like, holy smoke. So I called up our program director. Remember Dave Schaefer?
Of course. God bless Dave. Yeah.
Called him up. And just to show you people how times were different than they are today, he had no idea because he didn't have his TV on or radio on.
Wow.
As compared to now, like our phones will ding, 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 and let you know. So he let me, per se, break format. I just played Beatles music all night long. But that was one of those nights, that really, just stood out.
I remember that night well. We were lying in bed watching Johnny Carson, and it broke. And it was just the most gut-wrenching, shocking thing. And speaking of Dave Schaefer, his son, Michael, you may remember Michael, just announced his retirement. The guy is still working all this time. I just saw that on the trades. Anyway, so that was an eventful night for sure. And then from there, you continued your journey. You were at Channel 20 for a while too, yeah?
Right. Well, actually, my very first job on TV, again, also was in 1980. It was on a TV show called PM Magazine on Channel 2.
That's right.
And that was another funny one about how I got that job. They somehow or another, they didn't want to put an ad in, but it wound up becoming an ad in like the Detroit Free Press about, hey, PM Magazine's looking for a new tipster reporter, which was the person who's going to go out and, find all these fun things to do around the city. Right. So everybody and their mother wound up calling. So what they did, they decided to make it into, a show. And so they told everybody to show up and have a basically like 3-minute story, something like that. I know it wasn't more than 5, but a 3 to 5 minute story about something that was uniquely Detroit. And the way they had it going, Mike, was I'd be in line, but you'd be in front of me. And then so-and-so would be in front of you because as soon as you were done, boom, they just kept rushing people through. So I'm listening to the two guys in front of me. One's talking about hang gliding over Lake Michigan. Yeah. And, the other one is talking about, skiing up north during the winter. My story, this is no lie, was the invention of the drink, the Boston Cooler.
Wow.
Because most people always think, well, if it was invented in Detroit, how did it get the name the Boston Cooler? Verner's ginger ale, Stroh's vanilla ice cream. Yeah. But it was invented by the people who worked for the folks who lived on Boston Boulevard. Each year, they would have a summer competition to come up with a refreshing drink for the people who lived there. And so that wound up, being the one that won whatever year it was, but thus the Boston Cooler.
Now, that's the kind of information you won't find anywhere else but here on the Franklin Show.
That's right. And I kept thinking, okay, I'm talking about doing, an ice cream float. So that ended it. 2 days later, the executive producer of PM Magazine, Helen Love, who I'm still dear friends with, gave me a call and said, guess what? We want you. And it's like, great.
And that was a huge show for years. And didn't it go into national syndication?
Yeah, it was one of those shows where it was all across, like you said, all across the country. They had one in New York, Chicago, LA, where they were national, but then also local, where we would do our local stories. But we could also take a story from LA about, fun at Disneyland, or the one in New York about the Empire State Building or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great one. I love that. And so after PM Magazine, and by the way, how many years were you on that show?
I want to say at least three years.
Yeah.
And then, because then after that was when.
And for $25 and a 6-pack of beer every week, that's pretty impressive. I'll tell you.
You're not too far off.
Well, that's what radio is today, unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh, we were talking about that the other day. I know you and I will talk about that.
Yeah. All right. So PM Magazine ends your run on that show. Then where did you go from there?
Well, from there, because I was also off of OMC at that time.
Yeah.
I found out about a weekend position at WCXI AM 1130, the country radio station, and they were looking for a news, announcer for the weekend.
Oh,
so
okay.
I
was wondering if you were going to say Country Greg.
Oh, it does get better. Wait, Mike, there's more.
And there's more to the story.
So this is when I knew something was up, because I was sitting in the newsroom, and you always have the music up just so you're listening to the station, so you know what's going on.
Right.
And there was a song called "Just to Satisfy You," Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings. And no lie, man, I'm sitting in there. Next thing you know, I'm singing along to it myself while I'm typing up the news. Someone's going to get hurt before you're through. And I'm going, holy smokes, I'm singing to a country song. What's going on here? But I realized I actually kind of liked it. And then that was when they bought 92.3 FM. It was Gene Autry's Golden West Broadcasting.
Oh, yeah.
So they had the FM station. So they were looking for people to be on the air there. So I figured, what the heck? Let me apply.
Yeah.
I applied. And next thing you know, here I am, your country western overnight DJ. And I got to tell you, Mike, that was the wildest time ever in radio.
I'll bet.
My goodness.
The Dino Day era.
Yes.
Yeah, man. Oh, that's awesome. And so along the way, you started Russell Brothers Tours. You want to talk about that?
Sure. Actually, Russell Brothers City Tours, how that all came about. It was holiday time 2017. My wife and I and our daughter and her husband were at some event downtown Detroit. And I would always ask, anytime we ever do something, if I can take the scenic route home, which means taking Woodward North. Usually I get vetoed, Mike. You know how that goes. It's like, just get on the freeway. We want to get home as quick as possible. Because my daughter has been going, you're going to tell your stories. And we've heard your stories. I said, I don't care. But please let me do it. So I think they felt sorry for me.
Respect from our kids. Boy, I tell you.
Right. But they gave in. They said, do the scenic route. And it's like, and I did do exactly that. Just started pointing out, what used to be there, what Motown person used to do this there, what about this, da 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 da. So I got done, and once we got home, daughter said, "You know what, Pop? You know so much about the city. Why don't you give tours?" And I've been asked that before, Mike, really over many years. So I thought, you know what? Let me really think about that. So I called my brother Cliff. As you remember Cliff, from WWJ and so many other things. And so I called him up and I said, "Hey, Cliff, here's this idea. What do you think about starting it, in 2018? So it was almost, I always joke in Cliff form, you put it together and I'll show up. And it's kind of like, just like when we were in school, I would do your homework and know it. So I started putting some ideas together. But then unfortunately, as you know, Cliff passed away in February of 2018.
Yeah.
And that just made me more determined to get this business up and going. So I got in touch with a good friend of mine, Dave Garr, who owns a Dream Limousine. He and I have been working together for years as well on, other things.
Yeah.
Told him about it because he has a party bus. And so he said, yeah, let's do it. So his mom at the time was this big lady as far as the senior citizen ladies groups of Macomb and Oakland County.
Yeah.
So she set up our very first tour with a group of ladies who had grown up in Detroit, hadn't been back, for a while. But that was when they had heard about, all the good things were going on and they wanted to see it, but they didn't want to, of course, drive themselves.
Right.
So we picked up our first group of little old ladies, took them on their 4-hour tour. They had such a ball that they came back and started telling all their other little old ladies groups. So for like 3 months, it was me, Dave, and little old ladies. And, just the word got out there. And now, it's been going, like gangbusters since then. And, really appreciate, all the help, and especially, helping to get the name out and all that. But we've got people, not just from Detroit, but from across the country, from California and New York. And my favorite, of course, as you know, me being the big Beatles fan, a group from England. Yay. So.
Oh, awesome. So we'll put it up on the screen so people know how to contact Russell Brothers City Tours. and for a fun time. And that's a great thing. That's a great side hustle. And in the meantime, you're live in the D on WDIV, the NBC affiliate in Detroit, Michigan. And you're doing a great job as an entertainment reporter. So let's talk a little bit about that. Your favorite interview. I already know. Franklin told me, he's heard about it. Denzel Washington, right?
Yeah, it's Denzel. I mean, here's a guy who, I like with a lot of them because he's one of the biggest stars, out there. And you're thinking, okay, if I go into the room and he's this, fine, you've earned it, you deserve it,
right?
But the very first time I met him, I went in, we shook hands, and he said, "Oh, Detroit." He says, "I have family in Flint. We used to spend summer vacations in Flint," and that just started off right there. And he treated me that very first time as if we had been friends for 30 years. And he is always so gracious. I was in New York a few months back when his son's movie came out, and he's standing there in the hallway, because he didn't want to go outside because there were a lot of reporters and, the paparazzi. And he's like, "Hey, man." So he and I stood there in the hallway and talked for about 15, 20 minutes. And you're thinking, these people outside think I must be the coolest guy in the world. But one of my favorite Denzel stories, Mike, is this. One time for the movie Flight, we were in LA to do the interviews. And so how when you do the junket ones, you're doing it in a hotel. Yeah. So I'm standing in the hallway of the hotel. I'm talking to this lady who's a friend who also does junkets. Next thing you know, her eyes get as big as saucers. She's looking over my shoulder, and I'm going, if somebody's coming up behind me, like with a weapon or a frying pan, let me know so I can look. Next thing you know, I tapped on the shoulder. I turned around, and it was Denzel. And it was him and his, I want to say business partner, because that's what his friend Larry is, who's also now a good buddy. And then he came over, "Hey, man, how you doing? Just wanted to come over and say hi." So he says, "Well, I look forward to seeing you when you come in for the interview." And at that time, I wasn't a voting member of any of the organizations, the Academy or Screen Actors Guild or anything like that. So I said, "Oh, I won't get you because they said you have a very limited list." Denzel looked at Larry like, "Okay, we need to take care of this." So he says, "Okay, take care. Talk to you in a little bit." Next thing you know, 5 minutes later, and I can say the studio now because none of the people work there anymore. The girls from Paramount came down the hallway, and it was just like the stormtroopers in Star Wars. Dun, 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 dun. And they're going, "Greg, Denzel has requested that you be, he wants you to interview him." They said, "However, here's the only thing. We'll have to put you in last," because they had already had, the other people's schedule, which I understand, time-wise. They said, "But because of that, you'll miss your 6:00 flight. Is it okay if we put you up for one more day, fly you out tomorrow morning, put you up one more night at the Four Seasons in Beverly Hills, all expenses paid?" And it's like Florida Evans, damn. I got no problem with that. Great.
I love that story because I'm in the middle of contract negotiations, Franklin and I, for the renewal of our show. And, some of my demands are going to be similar to that. I'm going to want to have a bigger budget for my guests, for hotels and flights and so on and so forth. So, yeah, that's helpful. I appreciate you telling me that story.
Anytime, Mike, anytime. You know that.
Yeah. But my previous guest, Ted Ferguson, was telling me about his agent, who I am now being represented by in New York. So we're going to have a good time with our contract negotiations. But anyway, that's another story. So
you have to tell me about that one. I'm looking for a new one. My guy, Swifty Lazar. I don't know what happened to him.
I said that's who my agent was. I swear to God, Greg, you'll see the tape. I said my current agent, Swifty Lazar, is not doing it for me. It's beautiful.
Same guy.
Live television, man. I love it. All right. So now you won an Emmy. And so tell me about that. I mean, that's a big honor.
Yeah,
I've got 2 Emmys, by the way, just for the record. But go ahead. Tell me about yours.
And I'm with you, too. See, not only did Swifty get you 2, he got me 2. But yeah, I got them both for the same show. That was when I was working at Channel 20, and we had a show called Positively Detroit, which was, a special that we would do, I think, quarterly. But it was all about the good thing. It was almost like Live in the Deep, which I'm doing now,
right?
Where it was all about the good things of the city. Where we would take you around. We would show you people who had, like a bead business or a clothing making business or a nice bakery or this great like Italian restaurant, authentic and different things like that. And I've always enjoyed those stories, far more, Mike, as you know, than any of the, other types of things. And so, I wish
So
I could
you and
remember.
I share that in common too, Channel 20. So
Yeah.
Aben Johnson is
Oh,
my hero, my mentor. When I was 13 years old, WXON Channel 62 at the time in Walled Lake, Michigan, came on the air. I
yeah.
was a big broadcast lover. I started communicating with Mr. Johnson, who I called him and still do to this day. And he invited me out to the studio. My dad drove me out there and I spent the day with them. I started writing press releases when I was in my early teens for
Oh,
Channel.
wow.
And I started providing them a list of leads. I would watch Channel 50 and watch the other TV and radio stations and send a list of leads. He paid me $0.25 per lead, so that's better than a 6-pack of beer. And and then when I was older, he said, when you graduate school, come see me. We'll get you started. And he was the one who introduced me to the advertising agency business, and I got to start my own business shortly thereafter. So I have a tremendous fondness for the Johnson family. Aben Johnson, he's 94 years old, I believe, in Pompano Beach, Florida. I'm in touch with his sons and his daughter, and I sent him my book, and he read the story about this whole crazy thing that became my career, and apparently was enraptured by it. So that's a great. I love Channel 20 and WXON and the Johnson family. Great people.
God bless him. When you said he's still around. Oh, and next time you talk to him and his family, please tell them I said hi.
I will. I'll share this with Marty and Doug and Sue. So then now you're doing the D show, and is that weekly? Is that several times a week?
It's a weekly show. It's on Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time.
Yeah.
And I'm on every Friday. That's when I do the movie reviews and, things like that. Plus they will have me on, occasionally as the guest host, during the week. And like I said, it's another one of those where it's fun. It's always someone new, who you're meeting, and you just get to enjoy things. I mean, like we'll always have like the Michigan Humane Society on, and I know how you are, like with Franklin and all like that, where it's nothing better than you're sitting there and there's a cute dog sitting next to you and just, mugging along with you. So that's always fun. And then also, Mike, the thing that's even changed, remember how, like, I want to say 20 years ago, like if you and I were talking about meeting in downtown Detroit for lunch, our answers or our questions would just be, where are we going? Lafayette, Coney Island, or American Coney Island? Because that's all there's down there to eat.
Yeah.
Now there are so many new restaurants here in town. Yeah. It's just great. Everything you want, we've got.
Yeah, no doubt. No, we've watched Detroit just completely transform in the last couple decades, thanks to Franklin Village's own Dan Gilbert. God bless Dan, man.
Yes.
My neighbor and philanthropist, and just a wonderful guy. Transformed the city of Detroit virtually overnight, back when he brought, I think it was 17,000 of his Rock Financial employees to that CompuWare building and started buying up all the properties. And now we've got a city we can be proud of again.
And I'm right.
And the Motown Museum has expanded greatly. I'm sure that's part of Russell Brothers City Tour. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's, when I say has been my family of my whole life, we've known them growing up. And that's definitely always on the tour. And like you said, they're expanding. So looking forward to even just seeing how much it's going to grow more next year. And then they just bought, they already had this one building down the street. Yeah. It's going to be the Esther Gordy Edwards wing of the museum, where they're also going to have, all these other different artifacts that people have donated. And I should mention this, I donated a lot of my own Motown stuff to them. So that stuff will be on display.
Wow. I'll be looking for that. And, I'd like to get Robin Terry on the show. Put in a word. Robin runs the Motown Museum, and I'm a big fan, big proponent of that museum. In fact, when the Van Morrison band, I'm very close to the band. When they came to Detroit the last time, I took them to the Motown Museum for a private tour, and they haven't stopped talking about that ever since. I mean, these are all UK artists who were
Right.
just so enamored with that amazing factory that Berry Gordy created on West Grand Boulevard. And I've got pictures of me and the band standing out in front of the Motown Museum. And I mean, that's a highlight of anybody's visit to Detroit, or it should be. So
Right. And we also got to get more Detroiters to go there too.
isn't that amazing? I can't tell you how many people I've talked to in my life that I say, yeah, you've been to the Motown Museum. No, I've never been there. How can you not? How can you not? I mean, the fact that that place operated 24/7 and that Berry Gordy groomed these kids who all lived in that neighborhood. You know, there's a map in there that shows here's where Diana Ross lived, across from Levi Stubbs, around the corner from Smokey Robinson, and down the street from Otis Williams. I mean, you know, these were kids that were in the neighborhood that he just brought in, dressed them up, and put them out on stage. And what an unbelievable gem.
Right. And absolutely. And then have a quick funny story to share with you. If I can, I'll get in real quick, I promise.
Yes.
We were talking about that, you know, how we've got to get the people of Detroit to go. As you know, you've known me forever. I'm a big Beatles fan, you know, always loved them. I'm shocked I don't have a shirt on right now, but I do have the shoes. But when I was over in Liverpool, this was about 5 or 6 years ago, when they had that movie called Yesterday, you know, about the Beatles music. So I'm just in, you know, heaven. In fact, Mike, I even wound up giving 3 tours to people out of my group, out of the Junket group, even though I'd never been there before, but they said I knew where to go. So it was an international tour. So coming back home, I'm sitting on the plane. I've got on my Motown shirt. And so our flight attendant comes by and she goes, "Oh, Motown. I've taken my mom and my grandmom there every other year for the past 4 years. We love it. We go there all the time. We love Detroit. We love the Motown Museum. And it's just a great place to be." And I said, "Oh, that's fabulous." I said, "Where are you from?" She said, "Well, I'm from Liverpool." I said, "Oh, have you been to any of the Beatles stuff?" And she's like, "No."
You're right. Isn't that interesting?
It
Probably
really
never been walking down Abbey Road, you know? That's
right.
Great. Now, before I let you go, you have to tell me, have you ever met one of the Beatles?
Yes, sir, I have. And I definitely see that picture to put up. It was one of the, you can almost go, one of the greatest times of your life. I'm a member of the CCA, Critics' Choice Association of America. So we always have our award show as well. And this was probably 10 or so years ago, because I think my mom was still living at that time. Was out at our award show, and everybody's there. I mean, I'm sitting there, and a friend of mine, because Rita didn't go, but she always tells me, take one of the people, you know, who's done you really well, like when you're out there, you know, as your guest. So we're sitting there, and just to set up, there's the Inglorious Bastards table to my right. That's, you know, Clooney and all those guys just having a good, Matt Damon and that group over there. And then Clooney was at the table on the other side. So you're thinking, this is really cool. But looking right in between, there's Paul McCartney. He was there because he was nominated for an award, or he did a song for some movie that I don't remember, to be quite honest with you. And so back then they used to tell people, don't ask the stars for pictures. They're not here for that. They're here, you know, and it's like, yeah, right. So during one break, I just said, I have to go over and talk to him, you know, just say hi. I won't take a picture because I want to follow the rules. So I just went over there and I said, tapped him on the shoulder. I said, "Hi, Mr. McCartney." I said, "My name's Greg." I was like 8 years old again. I'm Greg Russell. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I'm just one of your biggest fans, and just
typical line.
You. And immediately he goes, "Motown, dude, I love that place." And it's like, all of a sudden we became best friends.
Right.
So the music comes on, so I've got to go sit back down. During the next break, I start seeing people taking pictures with him. So my friend Emma, who was with me, says, "Next break, you're going over there. I'm taking you over there." It's like, okay. So the next break comes. We just kind of like go through, because he's almost got a line. So he just took a picture with somebody, and I'm behind him. I tapped him on the shoulder, and he turned around kind of like this, like, and he went, "Oh, hey, Motown, what's happening?" I said, "Is it okay if I take a picture with you?" He says, "I'd be pissed if you didn't." And we take this picture, and as you'll see, he's got his fist under my chin, and I've got mine like this, because he was going, "This guy from Motown, he's been taking my girls away from me for years." And I'm going, "Oh, my God, he's taking his girl."
Yeah, no, the UK loves Motown. You know, I've been in, to London numbers of times, and in Covent Garden, there is a Detroit club. And I walked into the club and I said, who here is actually from Detroit? My wife and I, and we raise our hands, and the crowd just wants to come over and talk to us because they truly do love Detroit and Motown. And that is something that stays with me. I'll never forget it. I have my own quick fantasy, and then we got to cut this, but that, my son has met all these artists because of who he is.
Oh, absolutely.
Business. But so I says to myself, if I ever see Paul and Ringo together, I would do this. My wife and I would walk over to Paul and Ringo and say, do you mind? I know you're always asked this, but do you mind if we take a picture? And of course, they're going to begrudgingly say, oh, of course. But I would say instead, I would like it more if Ringo would take a picture of me and my wife, and Paul would take a picture of Ringo taking the picture of me and my wife.
Oh, wow.
They would probably laugh their asses off at that concept. And I've mentioned this to my son, and of course he rolls his eyes. But nonetheless, if it ever happens, you'll see it here on the Franklin Show.
I would love that, Mike. I would love that so much.
And then, of course, we would take a picture. But anyway, hey, Greg, man, I am in awe of you and your illustrious career. We've known each other for many, many years, and I'm so grateful to have you on the show today. I do want that picture of you and Sir Paul.
You got it.
Here, and we'll put Russell Brothers City Tours up so that people know how to contact you and make the arrangements. And I wish you all the best in your future endeavors, and live in the D on WDIV Channel 4 in Detroit and all over the world now, because you can watch all over the world.
Yeah.
All right, Greg. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, too, Mike. Appreciate it. And tell your son that Beaver Cleaver says hi. You can tell them.
Yeah, that's another story for another show. The Beaver Cleaver story. Okay, folks, I got to very quickly. And when my son was very little, and Greg was with me, and my son said to me, "Is that Beaver Cleaver?" That's a true story, folks. That was Greg Russell. He was not Beaver Cleaver. But anyway, what a great show on the Franklin Show. We'll be right back after these words. Thanks, everybody. Thank you all.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back. Dad! You probably don't remember what you told me.
That was perfect.
But I heard every word.
Well, how's that for a showbiz show? I'm telling you, that was awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as Frank and I enjoyed it. And we look forward to seeing you again next week, right here on The Franklin Show. Bye, everybody.